Bad news for Lucasfilm Games and for Ubisoft. It appears that Star Wars Outlaws has less than half of the sales that it should in some regions. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is my Wookiee co-pilot, Mr. VashSky. Or are you a droid with a coat?
Ooh, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Well, the Wookiee co-pilot does definitely apply this time right here, but maybe this is what they did, Jonas. They put me in to this simulated world here, and then they just kind of uglified me to make me look like something else. So maybe that's what happened here.
No, Vash. You're not uglified. You're a handsome fellow here. Let's talk about Star Wars Outlaws. So, report, Star Wars Outlaws sales 55% lower than Star Wars Jedi Survivor in the United Kingdom. Well, that's top of the morning to you out there in the United Kingdom. I'm just kidding. That's an Irish phrase. What is it? Cheerio to all of our United Kingdom viewers here. This story by John F. Trent. Look at that. KFS looks so very surprised. According to Nintendo Life, Star Wars Outlaws topped the sales charts in the UK, besting Hogwarts Legacy, Elden Ring, Armored Core 6, Fires of Rubicon, and EA Sports FC 24. However, games industry head Christopher Dring reported launch sales are 55% lower than what Star Wars Jedi Survivor did. He also noted it was a 15% bigger than Ubisoft's massive last game, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. Here we go. This fella right here is very talkative about games these days. And he says, we don't have digital data yet. And this is just the UK, but it was a weak launch for Star Wars Outlaws at UK retail in that information yet again. So it turns out there may be some missing data from the physical numbers. So it's worth waiting for the end of the week when the digital stats are in, which is just true generally. However, other data points indicate that Star Wars Outlaws might not be selling all that well. True Trophies reported in its most popular PS5 and PS4 games chart, which ended the week of September 1st, that was just a few days ago, that Star Wars Outlaws placed 25th on the chart in its first week of release. The outlet's Kess Eilers Stevenson, I'm sure I've mispronounced that name, forgive me, shared that number 25 is just below the middle of the chart and sits behind pretty much every major and middling live service game in terms of popularity right now. Normally, these are early 20s spots where PS Plus indie games debut, not new AAA open world games. And that's what this is. This is easily a $200 million game. This was supposed to be a game that moved systems on some level here. This is a very expensive, this is a big IP, this is a very expensive property, and this is a game that should have moved units. Vash, do you have any comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. This is a game that was in development for, I think, for a little while here. I know that the EA exclusive contract for games, I want to say that was opened up in 2017, 2018, something like that. This game has been in development for Ubisoft supposedly since around that time, at least when it started to open up here. They spent a lot of resources on this, dedicating a lot of teams, I'm sure, working on this game. Plus $200 million. This was a big swing and a miss here by Ubisoft, and a lot of people were actually very excited about like a Star Wars RPG, grand scale RPG here. Unfortunately, I don't think the expectations were met by this game, and that's reflected in the sales numbers.
You know, it's funny. You and I were talking about whether or not this is an RPG before we started recording this video. I don't know that I would count it as an RPG. It seems like it's an action game, but it's not a very good action game. That the platforming is not very good. The aiming system is clunky, and well, this doesn't seem like a fully polished game at this point. But I would really struggle to call it an RPG, other than that there's like a shop element and you can upgrade your equipment here, which I don't know. If Zelda is an RPG, I suppose this is an RPG, not to compare it to one of the greatest game series of all time. With Star Wars Outlaws, it's already comparing it to the greatest film series of all time, but
right.
Or film franchise. For comparison, it performed worse than games such as Red Dead Redemption 2, Helldivers 2, Elden Ring, Ubisoft's own Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege, and Black Myth Wukong. Black Myth Wukong, I don't think that was a $200 million game, and that is blowing up the charts right now. There's a lot of positive reviews on that game. And the difference here is Black Myth Wukong, there were some stories about the devs saying no to sensitivity readers that were coming in and trying to incorporate all kinds of modern ESG metrics into the game. And they said no. Whereas we all have our suspicions here with Star Wars Outlaws that they were actually trying to go for, I don't know, putting in a feminine character, but making sure that nothing about her femininity makes it into the game.
Yes, I did see some headlines indicating that the developers behind Black Myth Wukong were talking about how they definitely wanted to cut against the grain when it came to maybe Western proclivities. Very, very interesting indeed. Look, this thing should have been very, very successful. And the reason why we're covering on that Park Place and not just exclusively on that game place, which I'm sure we're going to have coverage on this as well, is because it's the larger story of Lucasfilm, right? It is the Star Wars brand sinking to a level at which it can't on its own elevate games like this. You would think that something connected to the Star Wars brand or having the Star Wars name would drive sales just on its own. But the fact that it can't even match up to Jedi Survivor and so forth, it really does indicate, at least to me, that quality is king here and Star Wars ain't going to save you.
Right. I'm also going to point out that as far as Black Myth Wukong goes in Star Wars, NorsePL has added a Nexus mod onto Black Myth Wukong. And there's an amazing video here that you just have to see where they've added Darth Maul into Black Myth Wukong. Let's bring that up here so we can all enjoy it. Here it is.
Fool me? I'll make sure you regret it.
First of all, the game just looks awesome. And if you're playing the game for a power fantasy, first of all, the game works fine on its own for that. Those moves are tight. The animation is great. You would feel like you're accomplishing something. You would put yourself in the place of this Monkey King character here. But the fact that you can play as Darth Maul and he's got those Ray Park style moves here, that's awesome. That's the kind of thing that if they announced that this was the game right now, I would be tempted to buy it instead of me looking at this $130 Star Wars Outlaws game and saying, ooh, how much do I have to pay in order to play this for the channel here? By the way, the answer was $20, and I'm going to go make sure that my subscription doesn't roll over and I have to pay another $20 for Star Wars Outlaws. This right here has grabbed me immediately and said, that looks pretty cool. I've got to try that. Star Wars Outlaws, no.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. You talk about power fantasy, and it's so true. We were talking about it actually while I was in Palm Springs, talking about how the game Star Wars Outlaws doesn't really fulfill anybody's power fantasy, really, when that cuts across genders. But you take something like this, I mean, this looks outrageous. And I think the ultimate power fantasy in the history of Star Wars was probably Force Unleashed. That's kind of the game that people want there. I understand they have Jedi Survivor and all that. But when you look at something like this, I mean, this is just, it is awesome. I understand it's a mod and everything, but this is the power fantasy that we were talking about. This is fulfilling on thrusting you into the Star Wars universe. Well, I mean, at least via a mod, I guess, but really having fun with the power fantasy aspect of it, fun with a developer that doesn't necessarily hate its audience. I mean, this is it right here.
I obviously agree with you here. And I have played Darth Maul games in the past, but I would love to play a game where you're really out there with a AAA budget going out and going to town against, I guess, other lesser evil people as the definitely evil Darth Maul. That would be a lot of fun, as opposed to the first part of Star Wars Outlaws, where you wake up and you're a poor person and you have to go collect scraps in order to trade it into a shop. By the way, giant tutorial screen that pops up if you go to a shop to explain how shops work. Thank you very much. That's great. It's great. Never had that before. And then eventually, if you get enough scrap, which by the way, you have to find all the scrap, and they're little teeny tiny things that they have to be lit up in order for you to find it because they blend into the environment. Then I trade it in for a data spike. Then I take the data spike over to the door and I got to learn how to climb up the walls. It's just boring. It's not fun. I'm a Nintendo kind of guy here. And the primary rule for me is a game needs to be fun. It really needs to be fun. If not, it needs to be the kind of storytelling that grabs you immediately. And neither of those things are there in Star Wars Outlaws. The graphics definitely didn't do it for me. Is there any other aspect of gameplay that I'm missing here? Because the price isn't right either.
Oh, well, there is that one great aspect of this game, which is knocking out stormtroopers with helmets on. That's always fun when it
It's true.
works, I
A
guess.
nice backhand, you imagine. I mean, if you can imagine backhanding a stormtrooper from behind, and which of you would get more damage from that? I see a broken hand, a couple of fractured bones in your hand, as opposed to actually doing any damage to a stormtrooper.
If you can just knock out a stormtrooper with full armor on and it have no effect on you, then that armor is truly worthless. Like, I understand, maybe Boba Fett thrusting around a gaffy stick there and breaking some armor. I get that whole thing, but just taking the backhand to that and doing away with them. Oh boy, I mean, this is terrible, Jonas.
Yeah,
a lot of glitches too with this game as well.
And if you have somebody that's like the size of Chewbacca doing it, okay, there you go. There's something amazing. But instead, there's no suspension of disbelief for a game like that. All right, with that, we want to throw this to our commenters. Will you be picking up Star Wars Outlaws, or will you be getting Black Myth Wukong on PC and then adding in this Darth Maul mod, which appears to be amazing?
Well, you should be asking, will this game be concorded? All right, you see what I did there?
Ooh, that is a really good question. At this point, I don't know that they need to support it the way that Concord, those server costs, they said that they had content for years to come for Concord, and we're going to be talking about Concord over on That Gameplay, so you need to go check that out. Of course, like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Plays for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media account.